See, that's not my recollection at all. I have very different. Yes, sir.
Hello. Yeah, congratulations, Michael, on the book, or Mike. Yeah. Paul, congratulations on the outfit. It's like head to toe leather. I like it very much. Something that's interesting about what a fool believes is that Kenny Loggins first released the song, and something he said about the song not being, for lack of a better term, a hit with him was because of your unique playing style. That it was so different that it gave it that song a charge that no one else could repeat. And as a piano player, I guess the question for you is, and I've seen a lot of your interviews, and sometimes you'll pull out a piano. With Rick Beato recently, you did an interview, which was great, but you didn't play as much. So has anyone ever approached you about doing a training video and walking through your songs and your playing style? Because that's something that I would love as a piano player. I haven't been able to find it really anywhere out there. So.
Well, thank you. Your confidence is more than I deserve. I never really considered myself an instrumentalist per se. I was a songwriter who played okay in a couple of keys. And I've always honestly been a little sheepish about my playing. I was always grateful for punching in. Because typically with Doobies we would get a track we liked. Then we'd all line up to go back and fix our parts, I found that over the years I started to enjoy learning more about the piano, and that's a lifelong journey really for me. I'm still learning, and part of my reason for going back with the band was I never really felt like I was putting myself in that position to learn more than I did when I was with the Doobies. Other gigs that I had, I would kind of take the easier, softer way and concentrate on singing, and then just play as much as I needed to. But with the Doobies, if I was especially going to be the only keyboard player, I felt like I really needed to up my game a little bit. So in going back with them, that was kind of my motivation in the back of my head was, I'll get back in that frame of mind where I'm having to think a little more about my playing.
But when are you going to write the instruction book? That's what
Probably never. I wouldn't do that to you.
Yes.
Big fans of both of you. Michael, my question. You leave the Doobie Brothers, right? You decide to go solo, right? I keep forgetting, is that the song that separates you? Now, I'm on my own now. Literally, no pun intended to your husband.
That was our first single from the first solo album I did, yeah. And it was taken from a song originally written by Lieber Stoller, Chuck Jackson many years ago.
Just the phrase.
The phrase, yeah, I keep forgetting. We kind of, wrote a little different song around that phrase, but the interesting part about that track was that was the first tape and only tape. We cut it, and we were really all just learning the song, when we cut it. But Ted just felt like it felt so great that we weren't going to do anything better than that. And so he called us all in. And usually that meant, well, come on and we'll talk about it, and then we'll go back out and try it for a better one, And we came in, he goes, I'm telling you, that's it. We're not doing another one. And I said, you're kidding me? And he goes, yeah. I said, well, okay, And the drummer, Jeff Picaro, spoke up because I'd like to do another one. And which, Jeff is a supremely confident drummer, So I went, what? And he goes, yeah. He goes, I dropped my stick on the vamp out, and I'd just like to do another one, And we actually spent the next 20 minutes listening to the vamp out, and none of us could pick the spot where he dropped his stick because he reached down and grabbed it, got back up and finished, that bar. And never lost the groove or anything. So that's, if you listen real hard to that track, you might hear the stick hit the floor somewhere.
And the other piece of trivia about that was there's actually a whole bunch of great things about that track and how it got promoted and how it really launched that album.
Yeah.
But I never knew this. The female vocal on that is
My sister Maureen.
Maureen.
And my sister Maureen and I have very similar voices. We used to put her voice on this thing called an emulator. It was this sampler, one of the early samplers, and then we'd play it down an octave, and it sounded uncannily like me.
If you turn it down lower, it sounds like Jimmy Fallon.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Hey, Michael, any chance the Dukes of September will be out on the road again soon?
You know, that's a great question. I wish, but I don't.
So you guys at the Beacon, it was phenomenal.
Oh, thank you. That was probably the most fun for us, you know, because we got to do it. Some of the songs I did with them are songs I actually did with the Sheratons in St. Louis when I was 14.
You said you played songs that inspired you as
As a kid, yeah,
musicians,
and some of those songs I hadn't played since I was 14, but this time around I got to play with the Steely Dan band, so it was pretty wonderful.
All right, we'll see you at the Garden in August.
All right, buddy.
Yes, sir. It's like a TSA agent. We just.
Mike, I just want to tell you personally, you've given us given me and my son Brandon, who's in the crowd, 45 years of just incredible music, and we want to thank you. My question is, on the upcoming Doobie's album, are you going to have some songs on there? On the Doobie's
Oh, the Doobie, yes,
album?
yeah, we're doing, mixing an album right now that we've all done. You know, and it was a lot of fun to do that again. I was always hoping that, you know, the 50th anniversary would lead to us doing one more record. As it looks right now, we might even have another one in us, you know, so, but this one, it was a lot of fun. I think there's some great songs on it, you know, all the guys have written for it. We actually, for the first time, got to perform sing the songs together. Tom and I and Pat sing on one song together, and we're kind of using it as an opportunity to do things we never got around to doing back in the day.
Thank you.
Thanks, man.
Yes, sir.
Hi, happy anniversary, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Thanks very
I
much.
wanted to ask you your thoughts on the genre of music known as Yacht Rock in the Yacht Rock canon.
Yes.
You're known as the Yacht Father, which is, I think, a perfect
Yacht
description.
I have not heard that one yet.
You're not much more of the Yacht Rock canon. And I wanted to know what you thought of the genre and how it's been responsible for kind of a resurgence in some of the music that you put out, and how you've been able to connect with a newer generation of music lovers, especially the relationship with the, I think, 9-year-old fan that recently went public and went viral, that I thought was so sweet.
Sure. Well, you know, I mean, I of course love Yacht Rock, you know. I always kind of loved it. My kids did not hesitate to take me to the computer and show me the early episodes of Yacht Rock. And I had to say it was extremely funny, and we had great fun watching that stuff. But like oldies radio, you know, I remember when oldies radio came out, being a little disconcerted that I was relegated to oldies radio. But come to find that, you know, probably the only reason I'm still on the airwaves is because of oldies radio. And Yacht Rock, much the same. It's become its own genre, you know, music from the 70s. And I feel good about it because I feel like I'm in good company with Boz and Steely Dan and Toto and all those guys. Thanks.
Hi, I'm wondering what memories you have of the song Sweet Freedom, and in particular the amazing music video with Billy Crystal and Gregory Hines.
Two things stand out to me about the recording of that. I was a huge fan of Rod Temperton's at the time, and he had the track already recorded, and
He wrote the song.
he wrote the song and with Dick Rudolph, who had written the song with him. Well, they were in the process of writing it. They invited me to join them in the writing of it, and I remember saying something really stupid like, "I think you guys got this, you know, I'll just sing, you know." And I've regretted that every day since. But I loved the song, you know, it wasn't bad. And I came to find out that Dick Rudolph had a little girl at the time who was about 9, named Maya. And it turns out she grew up to be Maya Rudolph. And his son became a well-known engineer. You know, that was the first thing I remember about the song. But I totally forgot.
The video. You talk
Oh,
about
the
like
video,
making
yeah.
videos whenever you're a
Billy
favorite
and,
thing.
they showed up with unannounced, and
Billy and
Gregory Hines. We were doing the video, and it wasn't going that well, you know. the producer was kind of at a loss for where this thing should go, and I remember thinking, this is not going that great, and looking down and seeing a goldfish on its side floating in a bowl, thinking, even the goldfish is dying. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, Billy, Crystal, and Gregory Hines show up, and everybody was like, "Oh my God," and they proceeded to take over the whole shoot, and so it became what it became, and was probably the most popular video I ever had anything to do with, and videos were not my strong suit, trust me. I usually look like a guy who had just dyed his hair.
So speaking on behalf of all your fans here, you have such a special voice. I wondered if you would sing just a little bit of your favorite
Any particular song?
Peace. Wonderful Believers. It's my favorite.
Couldn't pick an easy one. She had a place in her life. Written by Kenny Loggins. He never made her think twice as he rises to her apology. Anybody else would surely know. He's watching her go. What a fool believes. I don't know what key I just
He doesn't have to prepare. He opens his mouth and it comes out like a McDonald.
It's twice in 1 week I've done the one thing I try to avoid doing at all costs, singing a cappella. Last night I'm found.
But it's fun. I mean, everybody, you say Mike McDonald, go, oh man, that voice, love that voice. And so when we were writing the book, I kept trying to dig in and, get him to talk about it. But it's so a part of you. And I realized it's sort of like asking George Clooney, he said, how did you get handsome? It's like, I don't know. It just came, you know what I mean? I don't know what else to say. So it's to our great benefit that the voice turned out like that. I'll be singing that song later in the lobby. If you're
Hey Mike, my wife and I are big fans. We've seen you and Bernie and the band dozens and dozens of times. Yes. My question is, you mentioned before about doing the Motown tracks. It was more fun than work. As a songwriter, do you feel that since it wasn't your material and the arrangements and everything were already there, that you didn't have to invest as much time and energy that you would be putting in if it was one of your own things, rather than just, taking what the Motown version was and making that your own?
Well, yeah, it was more fun for me with the Motown stuff because I grew up singing those songs or listening to those songs. What was missing was the blood, sweat, and tears of getting there, that it takes with writing. More than a few people have always said, you shouldn't stress out so much when you're doing an album, because the writing part of it, you just never really know if you got something good or not. But so having the stuff already written and proven on the airwaves, it wasn't a song we did that probably wasn't top 10 in its own time, But the only real stressful part was, trying to come up to the standards of the guys who had done the songs before, But it was so much fun, and that project, that when it came time for me to do another record of my own, it was almost like going back to work for the first time in years, Cool. Good to see you.
Yes.
I've been a fan for over 50 years. You bewitched me at the age of 15, and you've been a part of my life and my children's life. All that time, I've driven them crazy.
I'm sure you have. You're playing my music for me.
I worked small town radio for 28 years, and the first song I ever played on the radio was Taking It to the Streets.
Oh, thank you.
And I've always been proud of that. But the one song that defines my life is There's a Light, off of Living on the Fault Line, which is my personal favorite album. How did you come about There's a Light? Because it's helped me.
Well, thank you. It's funny, I have a good friend I grew up with that always asks me about that song. And I remember, the only thing I can say is I remember when I wrote it, I wanted to believe what the lyric was about. You know, I wanted to believe that no matter what we go through, that somehow, if we just trust that everything's going to be all right, and that somehow this is all meant to be, you know, for reasons better than we can appreciate in the moment, you know. That's what the song was about for me, and at that time in my life, I kind of felt that way myself. I felt like I hope that whatever I'm doing wrong, I can somehow find my way to do right at a later date, possibly, you know. Thanks. Thanks for playing that record.
Yeah, we'll take two more from each, and then we, Mike and I have to be legally in our pajamas by 9. So not legally, medically.
Hi, Paul. Paul, I just first want to say thank you. Thank you so much for getting him to finally do this.
Welcome.
There are children with us who have waited for a long time. So we're all going to go home and read our books and find out things about you that we never knew.
And there's a test tomorrow.
And even though we've seen you so many times, but my question to you is, what did you learn about yourself in writing this? Is there anything?
Sure. No, I think more than learn anything about myself, I think with each time that we get a chance to tell our story, we learn something new ourselves. But it kind of reiterated to me some things that maybe I kind of knew or I had learned along the way, but I could see the logic of why they might be true more. Most of the time in life, you know, the real victory we're looking for is in surrender. You know, it's not in overcoming so much of anything, and that's been proven time and time again in the human experience. And I hoped in writing the book with Paul, and what we both talked about as the story emerged for us, was that the universal part of the story is just how serendipitous and random things can be at the same time. You know, how life is, our best laid plans usually have nothing to do with what happens. But at the same time, we move ahead, and we have to trust something on the way. And by simply learning to do that and say yes when we might not be sure about whether to take the next step or not, many times things work themselves out, and for me that was certainly the case. Left to my own thinking, I would have screwed it all up, you know. But I was lucky sometimes to just say yes when I wasn't sure I should, and then just show up, you know.
Well, yeah, I'm glad that you finally did this.
Thanks, Jay.
Well, Michael, thank you so much for coming out tonight. Taking It to the Streets is my favorite song. Tell us how you came up with that.
Short version of that is I was always wanted to write a gospel song, you know, and on the way to a gig one night, I heard that intro in my head, and I thought, I wonder what that is, and I couldn't wait to get to the gig and set my piano up so I could kind of flush out those chords I was hearing in my head. And I thought, well, that looks pretty much for a verse, you know, and I had recently been talking to my younger sister, who was a college student at the time, and learning about all these social ailments that we, you know, as a capitalist society we're going through, and how she was expressing to me how any real progressive change always is hard to come by, and that the poverty isn't just an inner city thing; it's a rural thing too, and that the gap is ever widening. And
Mike said, "That's a hit."
Yeah, so I somewhere in that conversation, I woke myself up snoring, and I was very interested in what she had to say, and hadn't really thought about it in those terms, you know. And so, as I started to formulate the song, I thought, well, that would be a great lyric idea for this kind of gospel motif musically, you know. but Falling Through the Cracks is probably not a great title, so.
That was the original title.
That was, well, kind of, that was the best I could come up with at the time. That eventually morphed into Taking It to the Streets.
Yeah, you're awesome. Thank you for what you've done for us, and we love
Thank
you.
you so much. It sounds like
Yeah, Michael, so many of your great songs are just signposts in all of our lives and mark certain times that, you've just made all of our lives better. And I think of your entire body of work, my favorite song of yours is I Keep Forgetting. I think it's to this day, just it stands up as a great song and a great bass line and a great riff. My question is, not only is it a great riff in pop and rock, but someone thought it would be a great riff in rap. And Nate Dogg took I Keep Forgetting and turned it into a classic rap song, Regulate. I'm just curious to the story behind that. Did you know that they were going to use your riff before they put out Regulate? And what was the story, and what did you think of it when you were selected and how it came out?
They sent the song to us, and I liked what they did. My kids like that version much more than mine. But I realized that that this was a new kind of a movement musically, where people were kind of using music that they grew up with, and of course weren't we all doing that anyway? Even as songwriters. We had originally, the first time I heard that phrase was, with the Chuck Jackson record. I hadn't actually heard it, but my partner I was writing with did. And in a way, it was a kind of a continuum, and who was I to stand in the way of that? But and it's been used, funny enough, on other rap records. One of the things I find most interesting is I was well known in my circles, the band and the engineers we worked with, as being capable of coming up with the crappiest synth sounds known to man. That was not my forte, and so we'd wind up with these kind of swirly sounds on our records from synths. And I was really actually trying to come up with something better, but didn't. But later on hip hop records, I noticed that people were sampling those too, so I felt validated.
Thank you so much, both of you.
Thank you.